too late till we pass it? Actually, we're not doing the budget.
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Robin?
Yes.
Lena?
Yes.
Elaine?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Abstain.
Joe?
Yes.
Phoebe?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes. So moved.
No, Eva? She's on her way. Okay.
And under communications, you see the, as I spoke about last week, the resignation of Rebecca Spencer, the Spruce Mountain Elementary School secretary. Is anything under public comments up there?
No,
Thank you. Any board comments? John?
I just, in general, like to say, I've received 3 phone calls from people who were very concerned about the. Oh, thank you. I just received some phone calls over the past week from people who were concerned about the budget, just in general, and who were on fixed incomes and were just worried about how it was going to redound to their situation. I just told them that I would mention it at the meeting.
Anyone else? Okay, superintendent's report.
Good evening. I chaired a recertification meeting for Western Maine administrators during the past week. Had 2 post-conference meetings with teachers that I officially observed. I attended the professional evaluation, professional growth meeting. I met with Chairman Staples. I met with Association President Nathan Harnden today. I also attended a meeting with Western Maine superintendents to discuss COVID changes and reviewed budget and answered budget questions during the week.
Questions or comments for Superintendent Albert? Okay, on to administrator reports. We'll start with Sherry. And how'd the game go? Not good, huh?
No, well, it actually ended up being a very good game. We came up on the short end of a 4-2 score. But they played very well.
But
so.
you got to see him play.
I did get to
Good,
see him play,
good.
and as a senior, it's
Yay.
super important. So 8:40 tonight in Augusta is the next game. 8:40 puck drop, yeah. So, you know where I'm headed after this, right?
Yep.
So, special education, we currently have 349 students in special education. That is 3 less than in my January report. The elementary is up 2, middle school is down 2, and the high school is down 3. This does include, at the primary, they have 73 students in special ed, 12 referrals. At the elementary, 94 students in special ed, which includes 14 in referral. 91 students at the middle school with 4 referrals, and 91 students at the high school also with 4 referrals. We currently have 5 students in out-of-district placements. So total, we have 34 referrals in progress. That's 1 less than January, but that means they've been processed and new ones have come in. I know I have 2 sitting on my desk to review tomorrow, so they're coming in daily. We continue to have open positions in the middle school behavior program for a teacher, 1 elementary school ed tech 1, and 1 middle school ed tech 2. The teachers in all the buildings are really working together to cover each other, and it is definitely adding to increased exhaustion and responsibility, but they are working very hard, and I thank them for that. I hope that my case managers are all going to take next week with paperwork free. Is my encouragement to them.
Any questions, comments for Sherry? Robin? Then
Any applicants coming in for the open positions? Any
Yes,
applications?
I have offered the middle school ed tech position to someone, and I'm waiting to hear back from her. And then I had 2 more applications come in at the end of last week for the ed tech positions.
Good.
Phoebe?
Fortunately, Robin took one of my questions. The other question I have, is there anything that we can do as a board to help with the morale, to help support them during this time?
I think it's super important, and I've been trying to remind all of the teachers to make boundaries. You know, like their paperwork you need to have a cut time and leave it at school, and to really take vacation.
Right. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Chris?
Okay, good evening. Not a lot going on. We got a bunch of things in planning stages right now. little bit of good news on the technology side. When you all come back from February vacation, if everything goes the way it should, you should have a new website up. Our current one will be gone. I know everybody's disappointed about that, but if you want to see, we're working with the same company. They've done a lot of actual websites around Maine and I'm sure the country, but a good representation of the company we're working with and what they do. If you looked at the Lewiston district website, it's the same company, and we're kind of trying to get ours set up a little bit the same way as what they have because we like the looks of it. So that could give you a kind of a preview. And believe it or not, even though, well, with today's temperature, you might be able to believe it, but we're already starting to plan for summer school. So in the early stages, but just trying to figure out, looking at numbers and schedules and things like that, just so we can make sure we're on board. Where the state has just put out their request for districts that want Title I funding for summer school. You have to start filling out the application, and those are due mid-March. So we do have to get some planning done to make sure we get that in. We're planning to try to go after some funds to help support the primary and the elementary school for Title I. It's a great way to use that money because Title I money, where the primary and the elementary are both school-wide, we could use that money. Anybody in the schools could go to summer school that want to or need to, and we can use that money. We're not limited to only students who are Title I because technically everybody in those schools is considered Title I. And then lastly, we're looking at the remote academy, trying to plan for next year, or whether that's going to have enough students to go. One of the positive things for us is if it does go, we have 8 slots that are already paid for, because as you know, we bought slots this year and we did not use them all. So we have 8 slots that we can use next year. And we'll probably reduce, we'd only probably have 20 slots, 12 that we pay for out of the grant, and then the 8 that are coming to us. So it would definitely be a reduced cost for us, but we're looking at all the districts now and whether they're going to try to expand, or because a lot of the districts, are starting to go down a little bit in numbers, trying to get the kids back into the schools. So we're just in the planning stages to see how many students there actually will be in the remote academy, and if we're going to have enough to run it and things like that. So, but I will report back on that the more I know. That's it.
Any questions, comments? Elaine?
How many students do we have currently?
Currently, we're
taking
in the
these
remote
slots?
academy. We have 17.
17?
Yeah.
And are they across all grade levels? Or?
Yeah. It's I did have the numbers the other day because we met, but it's most of them. We have a good number at K to 5, and then another good number. We only have, I think, 2 that are at the high school level.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Lynn?
How did that change since the beginning of the year?
It was pretty steady. If anything, when we would lose a student or they would decide not to go to the remote academy anymore, another one would come along and fill in. So I'd say right now it's actually been steady for a few months. We're probably at our highest number that we've been at all year as far as students in the remote academy. And I would say, I think there were a few kids at the high school that started and decided wanted to go back to the high school. So if anything, our numbers at the high school went down a little bit from where they were at the beginning. Yep.
Anyone else? Thank you.
Thanks.
Laura?
So, good evening. I wanted to start with just kind of saying the same things I've said all along. We continue to have supply chain issues and labor shortages. We currently have 2 open positions in the department, and just the end of this week we're down 2 additional staff members. So things are really very tight in our department at this point in time. On Tuesday, I attended a webinar on community eligibility provision, and today I tried to listen to the special provisions 2 webinar, which is what our options are for operating the food and nutrition program for next year, 2 out of the 3 options. I started working on our annual USDA order, which is due on March 4th. This includes our PAL or net off invoice items or brown box items, and our DOD, which is Department of Defense, fresh fruit and veggies, that we can kind of set aside some funding for that. Everybody's looking forward to vacation next week and a break, obviously. Staff, really are. One of the things that I kind of wanted to spend my time reporting to you all tonight is just in where we're at as a department for participation in our program, which I think is very encouraging. When I pulled last week when we talked about it being the 99th day, I pulled just random, how many meals have we served on the 99th day compared to what we had served on 99 days of last year? And obviously we can't compare them because our student population was completely different, but I think very conservatively we could say 40%, of our students are in-house. But we served 3 times the number of meals this year than we did last year during that same time frame, which is pretty incredible. So for this week I thought, well, I really kind of want to look at our numbers. So if you bear with me for just a few minutes, I'd like to kind of go through each of the schools and the buildings, and it will kind of give you all an idea of why, and what is kind of going on. And I think there's 2 big factors that are driving these numbers. And one, I think that fewer students are out for attendance, and I think Scott can attest to that currently. So I think our participation is up for that. And I also think that last year helped with our participation, so our participation percentages are naturally higher. So when I look at the primary school back in September, our participation for breakfast was 60.4%. When I looked at the average for February, we're at 65.3%. So we have a huge growth. Just this week alone, the 5th, and every day this past week has just been another milestone. We was at 69% participation for breakfast. On our lunch numbers, September was 54%, February's average was 57%, and we were at 59.73% on the 15th. So I mean, it's really, there's a tremendous amount of growth that's going on in our program right now, which is wonderful to see. In the elementary school for breakfast, September we was at 60.4%, February's average was 66.4%, and on the 15th we were 64%. So I mean, when you can look, 6%, it's a significant increase. Middle school, elementary lunch, September was 56.7%, February was 65.2%, and the 15th we were 63%. The middle school was one of the areas that we really saw a significant growth. In September we were at 34.5%. In February we were at 42.75%, and on the 15th we were 45.3%. So we're seeing great participation, which obviously is what we want for the students. Their lunch at the middle school, we was at 55.98%, so 56%. February was at 58%. On the 15th, we were 63.7%. So I don't know what's going on this week. I think they're killing us. I have to honestly say, I think they want us out. The high school in September, we was 34.5%. In February was 50.9%, so almost 51%, and on the 15th we are 57%. For lunch, 44%, February was 48%, and on the 15th we was 50%. So we're seeing great participation. We're very encouraged by that. Staff is working really, really hard. Like I said, we was at 70% up until just before Christmas, was at 80%, and now we're down 2 more, and most likely that's going to be the way for a couple of weeks after vacation. So we're in for quite a little stretch here in this department. So that's all I've got to say.
Any questions or comments? Joel?
So with that change from like month to month, day to day through there, how do you predict, plan for that? And I mean, do we run at the risk of I mean, like the last X number of students don't have something, or do you end up with extra, or, I mean,
So we always overproduce.
right,
And
but
one
that's a
of-
big change, so I'm just wondering.
Yeah, so one of the things that I kind of brought on board was, I've aligned that each of the kitchens are serving the same like products and serving the same like items. So if we overproduce in one kitchen, more than likely that's on the menu the next day at another building. So it allows me to have a little bit of fluid and minimize my waste, which is obviously going to be cost savings for us. And that's one of the biggest shifts that we've had, our supply chain and, you know, that whole issue. I mean, I've made March's menu, but that menu is changing daily. I mean, we never know what's going to come in. Right now, we're back to our cereal shortages, all of our breakfast items. Yeah, it's really pretty amazing what's going on. So we try to keep. If you looked at our 4 menus, you'll see that the primary and the elementary school, they almost mirror but staggered, just with a little bit of movement, and that allows me to have as much flexibility.
Great.
Any other questions?
Anyone else? Thank you. You know, Robin's not here tonight, so Norma.
Hello.
Hi.
I don't have a whole lot. Just start off by saying that we have a great crew. I can't even say enough about our bus drivers. They're committed. They've welcomed me. I just feel very lucky to be working with these people. It's a great team environment. So that being said, we still have 4 open positions. I've contacted some acquaintances that I know that work in the employment, like helping people get back employed beyond minimum wage and with benefits. So I'm waiting for some of that. I've talked to Laura and Ken about maybe doing a job fair type of thing with the Career Center in Wilton. We really haven't talked a lot, but I mentioned it. So that's something that we're trying to do. And then I've been doing some research, like with different programs. I didn't know coming in that the Trans Finder program is paid for by the state of Maine. So I've been talking to some other districts that use it, and it's free. It doesn't cost us anything. So I really, in March, I'm going to start doing some training on that. I spoke to a woman out of Syracuse, New York today that is going to hook me up with a guy that's going to train me and all that through Zoom. And then Ron Duplessis that works for us is going to also get that training because he does bus maintenance and all that. So me and him are signed up for a program, 1 hour a week for 8 weeks. And then we also have a 4-hour initial program via Zoom that will be done in March. That will definitely save us $6,000 a year for the Zonar. So that's one way of cutting the budget. And the board had a question for me a couple weeks ago about hiring a mechanic in the garage. I talked to some other people that I know about wages, how much they would like an experienced diesel mechanic. We'd also have to benefits, lifts. We'd lose probably 2 bays that we park the buses in, and possibly for the tractor and snow blower. Waste oil, we'd have to find a way to get rid of that. That's costly. Tools, insurance rates, I could go on and on and on. And just dealing the few weeks that I've dealt with Bailey Brothers, I'm very, very confident and happy with the work they do, and I trust them entirely. And their rate is, their contracted rate, I know other places charge like almost twice that for diesel. So something else to think about.
Thank you.
And that's basically all I have.
Questions or comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Ken?
Good evening. I guess all is going as well as can be expected. As Norma said, we had 4 positions still down. You know, and along with our sicknesses, this week was, we thought it was going to be a pretty good week. We had 2 people that were out on sickness come back. But we had 2 go out on another sickness. So it kind of equals out throughout this winter. It seems like for some reason, just when we think we're getting ahead, we seem to go behind. Last Monday, we did hire 1 full-time person that had once been employed here, and he was a very good employee, but a young guy that wanted to try something else, and he did, and he found out, I guess, the grass isn't always greener. So he's come back, and we welcome him back. He, as I told Bob earlier, that he's a good custodian, and he's a very good bus driver. Over vacation, we're going to mainly do a lot of routine cleaning in most of the buildings, and it's basically due to there's going to be several people out with vacation. You know, and I know in the high school we're only going to have 1 employee that will come, and probably before the end of this week he'll decide to take a few days off. And middle school we'll probably have 3. It'll be the most. Elementary we'll have 2, and probably in the primary school we'll have anywhere from 2 to 3. And I'm sure some of those guys are going to take some time off, which certainly is much deserved. But what we got planned on doing, there's a couple of projects we do plan on doing. We'd planned these for a long time, so I hope that we can get them done. One is that we're going to have, through the ESSER grants, we got some funding to do some carpet replacements in the middle school. So we plan on doing 4 rooms during this time. We're going to start actually on Friday night with the Abby's carpet and tile will be coming down. So we'll be starting Friday night, and they'll replace them on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. And then Wednesday, we hope we can start waxing, getting things cleaned up. Thursday, they got a live shooting training to do, so we'll be out at the high school, middle school. And Friday, hopefully we'll finish up and be able to put the rooms back together, so we'll have them ready to go when the vacation week is over. At the primary school, we have, if you've been over there lately, you see many desks and some chairs. New chairs they got. I think this is also through the ESSER funding. So we'll be replacing several rooms with those. That'll be a good benefit. Also during this time here, I hope to find the time this next week to get going on a program that I have to do for the state for the water testing. It's a new copper and lead rule. We have to go around. Well, I have to go around to all these schools and find out and map out every place that we have drinking water or cooking water, and then have to send it into it's I'm trying to think of the name of the company, but it's a lab out of Lewiston, Auburn. I'm sorry, it's A&L Laboratories out of Auburn. They're the one the state's hired to furnish us with all the testing, and the testings are free this time. All the testing will be free. So we have to do those tests for the lead and copper, and also we're going to do some PFAS tests over at the primary school. And that's pretty much all I have for the main, to outline what we're going to be doing next week and what's been going on. I do want to bring up a little thing about the budget when we talk about budget and things, and just say that, you know, I've talked to Scott numerous times about this, and I'm sure some of you that was on the committees for the phase 1, phase 2 know that we brought figures up for this, that, you know, there's going to be some time, and if you ride around all these roads and look at these parking lots, they're really deteriorating bad. We're starting to get a lot of potholes, getting a lot of cracks, alligator cracks, vertical cracks, horizontal cracks. You know, there's going to come a time where they're going to have to do something. And I did go get some pricing on, and if we was going to do the whole project, you know, the pricing right now would be $586,945. We realize we're not going to do probably any of the project, but I do want to bring that up because it's been brought up for 4 or 5 years now, and we just keep putting it off, and we hope that we can get something through the ESSER program, and perhaps we can get something out of the ESSER 3. There's a couple things that I talked with Scott and with Chris, and there may be a couple projects that we can get out of that, and to fit them into a package, hopefully. I mean, but it is something that we got to think about. The roofing over at the primary school, that's our last roof that we have to replace. I think we've been in great shape, and thanks to the phase 1, phase 2, we've replaced the roofs here. We replaced the roofs at the elementary school, and of course, I think it was 7 years ago, the roof was done at the primary school. So we're in good shape there once we get those, and we also replaced the roof at the central office this year. So, with your guys' support and things, I think we're in great shape there for many years to come. So the one place we got to do left is the primary school. So it's something that, again, I know Scott's worked diligently trying to find some funding somewhere. And there's certainly some possibilities that we're looking into, but it's something else we got to think about. That these things sometime have to be done, and can only be put off for so long. And of course, in ending, I like to always end on a good note and try to say something. Abe Lincoln made a statement there. In the end, it's not the years, your life that count; it's the life in your years. And Mark Twain said, "Kindness is in a language that the deaf can hear and the blind can see." And that's my report.
Questions or comments? Davey?
Hi, just a quick comment that my son actually asked me to provide to you specifically. Dante wanted you to know that he thinks all of the custodians are fantastic people, and he credits that not only to the environment but to the people who oversee them. So he wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you. And I'd like to read a quick note here from Denise Acquitelli. Dear Mr. Staples and board members, this is actually an overdue thank you for the lovely letter I received in my mailbox last week about the winners of the VFW Patriots Pen Contest. I was very proud of all my students who participated in this yearly patriotic writing contest. I enjoy presenting this assignment to all my students each fall. There are many opportunities for these kids to learn something new about our country. This group of students who placed first, second, and third attended a luncheon on Sunday, February 6th. After the luncheon, they were presented with their awards. I am proud of each student and how they represented Spruce Mountain Middle School. Thank you for recognizing this. Denise Acquitelli.
Thank you, Lynn.
Yes, thank you, Lynn.
You're welcome.
And COVID update.
Okay, the last 3 weeks, cases have dropped significantly. Total cases from the first day of school until today, 436 students, 72 adults, for a total of 508 cases. You should all receive the robocall before you got here this afternoon about free test kits from the state of Maine. Just an opportunity for, if people wanted to order those, they can do so free. They can get 5 test kits for free. The Maine DOE and the Maine CDC further revised the standing operating procedure for responding to positive cases of COVID-19 in schools by suspending the recommendations for contact tracing. The previous guidance permitted schools with universal masking policies to suspend contact tracing. Now, regardless of masking policies, schools may suspend the contact tracing. Additionally, following meetings between the Maine DOE, Health and Human Services, and the Maine School Superintendents Association last week, state officials continue to evaluate potential additional changes to policies to prevent the spread of COVID-19 in schools. Maine has largely followed recommendations from the U.S. CDC, including for face coverings, over the last year. However, assuming no forthcoming changes from the U.S. CDC and continuing favorable COVID-19 trends, Maine intends to issue its own prevention guidance following February vacation, likely in early March. It should be noted that the federal transportation requirement for masks is currently in effect until March 18th for school buses. So any changes that would be made locally, that would still be in effect until March 18th, because that comes from the federal CDC. sounds like we're heading in the right direction. If we can get through this February vacation, there's been a lot of talks going on, so, and I'm glad to see that that's finally happening, so.
With the dropping of the mask requirement on buses, but March 18th, can we look at revisiting our policy for the schools, at least, if nothing else, make masks optional?
Yes, that's what part of this was discussing. They're really looking as a whole, after February vacation to see what that number is, to see if they take away that's the overall recommendation, that then the school boards can make a decision that it's optional instead of mandatory.
So we're looking at the end of vacation and then
They said a week or so after February vacation, so I mean, our next official board meeting is March 10th. That could be something, if the board so chooses to have a discussion on, or if at the latest after that, March 24th. So if something can happen within this next month, I think that's great, because it sets us up for a much happier spring, I think, for everybody.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So just to clarify, did you say they actually issued a new SOP?
They tweaked one little thing in the SOP, and the way they tweaked it in the SOP wasn't very clear. But then we got a message this afternoon that stated, because superintendents had asked the question, you said, okay, you're not going to no longer connect contact tracing with having universal masking. It really wasn't written very clearly, and then they came out and said that let's see where it said there. Now, regardless of masking policy, schools may suspend contact tracing, whether you decide to have it universal or optional.
And that's effective with issue today?
Yep.
Interesting. Thank you.
But like I said, they also had the follow-up caveat. Let's take a look in the next week here, or February, a week and a half or so after February vacation, because the fear is that things could spike a little bit. But if it only spikes a little bit, that's not a big deal. It's whether or not it spikes a great deal. So.
And so far, that means the SOP really hasn't changed, other than that one
little tweak. But that's a big tweak.
It is. That's a great tweak.
That contact tracing, which leads to the quarantining, is a big piece. That was the big piece of wanting to make sure, when they changed it back in January to the 5 days only, and only if you're positive, was huge, because our attendance has been great. We're finally getting kids at school. You look at the attendance list, it's like a regular January and February, just with, a little bit of cold and flu. It's not those COVID numbers that we saw back in September and October, where kids were out just because of being a close contact and never actually having COVID-19.
Yeah. So hopefully those updates that they're looking at after vacation will change the SOP regarding masks.
That's what we're hoping.
For a final decision here. I just want to be clear. Thank you.
So I read that document too that came out, and I did look at the updated SOP. Inside of the updated SOP, they actually have a snippet there at the end. It goes through the revisions, and it specifically states on there today's date, updated to note that schools may conduct contact tracing if feasible, regardless of masking requirements in school. And therefore, with our motion to follow the main US CDC's rules, we simply would just be following that rule where they're making that an option now, as opposed to a recommendation. And it doesn't carry the same weight that a recommendation did in the earlier SOP, and it clearly states so here in the document. So we as a board can make a decision, a motion today, because as it is, our motion already follows the US CDC's recommendation. So in fact, Scott, probably, I would believe we would have to kind of look at the motion and the point of order here, but I'm pretty sure Scott can make the choice on his own based on the fact that our motion is to follow the main CDC's recommendations. So What they're saying about the after vacation is for them to create a new SOP that coincides with all of the information and data that's been gathered thus far, which doesn't indicate either way of a, universal masking, right? But they've already removed that as of today. So again, with our motion as it is, we're already in a position where Scott can unilaterally make this decision for us, simply because that's how our motion was voted, was to follow the CDC recommendations. They changed that today.
But it was also, I checked with our lawyers on this, because it also stated that we were saying that it was going to be mandatory masking in our district inside. He stated that if there's something we want to change, it should be put on an agenda, so that everybody knows it's going to be part of a discussion and a vote. So that's why I'm saying, I said March 10th could very easily be that opportunity, plus we'd have a little bit more information for people to make that decision.
Right. I'd like to see that.
Yeah, and then after we make a decision on that, we also will have to sit down with the association and talk about the MOA and how that lines up. We might be able to do that between now and March 10th as well, just to let them know in which direction that we're heading. And because the MOA and also our return to school plan contains all those things. So those things might need to get tweaked as well. We all know the big thing is the masking. However, there are other little tweaks in there that we have to make sure that we're covering with. And when Nathan and I met today at the association, we mentioned that we'd probably have to have a discussion before we get too far along here.
Could you also check on, I think that motion, my recollection, which isn't always clear, was that the motion that we made specified masking would follow the recommendation of the Maine CDC. It wasn't just mitigating measures would. And if that was the case, the Maine CDC has not changed that recommendation yet. When I watched Dr. Shaw do his weekly update yesterday, he said that they're waiting for that stabilization, see what happens in February vacation, and then give them the week or two afterwards. So I think we need to look at if we're going to change something that was moved and passed before, we want to know what the wording was on that motion.
Absolutely.
Anyone else? Okay, the fiscal year 23 budget and revenue review. Do you have anything for us on this right now? Okay.
Just wanted to mention a couple things. At our first meeting, we talked about the possibility of putting the capital reserve together, specifically for utilities. There are really three choices we can do with this. We don't have to have a capital reserve. We can just use carryover money to help offset an increase that we might get in the next couple of years. The only thing that's dangerous about that is that could be spent someplace else. So you always have to worry about that piece. Especially, we have a little bit more money there now, as I sent out to all of you, that now we can keep 9% until 2025, FY 2025, where in the past, all we were allowed to have was 3%, and then anything over that 3%, you could carry for 3 years and spread out. Having that extra percentage might mean you decide you don't want to do a capital reserve. We can do a capital reserve that's very specific. Before I mention utilities, this capital reserve can sit there for many years, and if not needed, you don't have to spend it. If we decide we want a capital reserve for utilities, then what has to happen, it's actually on a referendum that they will vote for us to establish one, for us to move money from undesignated funds. Remember, this is not going to cost the taxpayers more money. This is money that's already there. That could come back to the taxpayers at some point in time, but we're not raising more money for this. And then vote to spend it. Now, if we didn't spend it in this 1 year, next year, you'd come up for a vote again, not to establish or add more money if we didn't need to, but you'd have another vote to spend it on utilities if you wanted to make it a specific capital reserve for utilities. The other option you can do is you can make a capital reserve for the operation of plant. This is not as specific and can be spent on anything that falls under operation of plant. I mean, Ken just mentioned, paving, etc. Talking with the lawyers, it did say that sometimes that could be a little more difficult for townspeople to buy into because it's more open. And people like to know if they're going to put something there, they want to know what it might actually be spent on. Any of these reserves can be spent in this coming year. There's no law against it. They do suggest, though, usually, if you know you're going to spend it in this year, you don't put it in a reserve because you should just be able to cover that in your budget. But we do know the volatility of some of the things coming. So those are options that when we bring the warrants to you guys, that you guys can decide this is what we want to do or we don't want to do. But it's just another option for us because we know there's some issues going to be coming that we want to make sure that we're ready for. So. Yes. The contingency is already in the regular budget, and anything in the regular budget that we don't have money for, we can always take it out of the contingency. Usually it's more there for a position. We talked about that this past year when we added some special ed stuff, but we believe that with having some of those positions not filled right away, that we'll have money that will carry through the rest of this year to cover those positions, so we won't have to touch that contingency money. And then that contingency money will then roll over with the regular budget in the general fund, and we can decide whether we want to do next year's budget if we want to put a certain amount into contingency. Yep.
Any other questions about budget?
So we'll next meeting is not the official one, but we'll probably be bringing what the warrants will look like and the totals so you guys can actually take a look at it, because after the next meeting, the lawyers take a look at it and set it up so we know what they are, and then it's the following meeting that you guys actually vote on all the warrant articles and any referendum articles as well. Because remember, one of the referendum articles we're going to have is whether or not we want to do an MOU with Fayette for tuition, which we've done for years. And the other one is every 3 years, I believe, we have to vote on how we want to do our budget vote, whether you have a meeting and the referendum. That's also one of the questions that comes up. I think it's every 3 to 4 years we have to have that on the ballot. So. Yes, Doug had the question. We'll also have a question on there for the $45,000 for the Holland Strong tennis courts.
On that there, is that broken down by town, or is it just a total?
For the Holland Strong tennis courts, will be broken down by town because it's actually local debt. So it'll be the 45%, 25%, well, 48%, 25.1, 25.2%. It's not like the adult ed and the food service, which is an actual amount that you charge to each town that's the same. So out of that 45,000, it's like 11.5, I think, or so for both Livermore Falls, and then the rest comes from Jay.
Any other budget issues, questions? Lynn?
At the next meeting, could you bring us a document that explains our options on the capital reserve?
Yep.
So that we have something.
Yeah, actually, I'll make sure I get it. We have a couple weeks now. It's not bang, bang, bang. I'll try to get it out to you guys ahead of time by email. Yeah.
Anyone else? Nothing under new business. You have your appointments, hires, transfers, retirements, resignations. No meeting next week, school vacation week, and I do hope that all the staff take some time and recharge their batteries and forget about paperwork in school for a while. It's an important time. Next meeting is March 10th at the high school, and that'll be our final review. Again, as Scott said, we'll be looking at the warrants for the next meeting. Should the 10th be a snow day, then we will go on the 17th. 24th, very important one at the primary school. That's when we're signing the warrants, voting and signing the warrants, and the Finance Committee will meet at 5:30 that day. And we still have a policy on the 1st. So I entertain a motion to adjourn. By Lena, second Doug. Roll call, please. Lena, and then Doug, second.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes. So moved.